Now that we've whitened the whites and we've sharpened the eyes, we're now going to proceed with sharpening of key features and also softening of certain skin areas such as the forehead, maybe the cheeks. So from here, we're going to be creating some new layers, and to do so, I'm going to press Ctrl J and Ctrl J again so that I end up with 3 layers. And I'm going to be making the top layer non-visible by clicking on the eye, and then I'll be selecting my middle layer. Now I'm going to start with softening. So to do so, I'm going to go to my filters and I'm going to be selecting a blur filter. And there's a few to choose from. I'm going to be choosing Gaussian blur. Now I'm going to blur this quite a bit, and if it's too blurred, I can always bring down the opacity of my layer down the road. So here I'm at a radius of 15 pixels, and I think that's a good amount of blurring for this layer. So I'm going to click on OK. Now from here I'm going to go back to my top layer and select it. I'm also going to make it visible again by clicking on the eye. From here, I'm going to be selecting my eraser tool again, and I'm going to make the brush size a bit bigger. I'm going to put it at 200 for now, and just make sure the brush is a soft brush. And the opacity, you can bring it down to 20%, meaning that you would need 5 brush strokes to apply the full effect. Now let's ask ourselves, what are the areas that aren't important in a face that should be a bit softer? And probably the cheeks, a little bit, the nose. So I'm going to brush over these areas to erase the top layer so that the blur middle layer is showing. So just go over general areas you want to blur out just a little bit. And if you would like to see what's going to actually show through, you can take off the eyes off your 2 lower layers to see exactly what's going to show through. Now, I'm going to click back on these eyes because I'm happy with the results, and I'm going to flatten these layers by pressing Ctrl-Shift-E. Now that I've done the softening, I'm now going to do the sharpening. So to do so, you're going to press Ctrl-J and Ctrl-J again to end up with 3 layers. And a bit like we did with the softening, we're going to do the same thing with the sharpening. So I'm going to select my top layer by clicking on the eye to make it non-visible, and I'm going to select my middle layer. But this time, instead of softening, you're going to be sharpening. And to do so, you're going to go to your filters, you're going to click on Other, and under Other, you're going to select your high pass. Now mine right now is at 30 pixels, and that's a good amount of sharpening. And again, if it's over sharpened, you can always bring down the opacity of the layer to bring that down the road. So I'm going to click on OK. I'm happy with that amount of sharpening. But this is quite important. You want to make sure that the blending mode for this layer is set at soft light. So I'm going to click right here, and I'm going to be selecting soft light. Now some of you have tried with hard light. Hard light also works. I'll let you decide what works better for you. So I'm clicking on soft light as a blending mode. Now this has sharpened my whole picture, and I want to do some selective sharpening. So I'm going to go back to my top layer, I'm also going to make sure that it's visible by clicking on the eye of the top layer. And from here, I'm going to go back to my eraser tool, and I'm going to brush over the areas that I want to sharpen. And in this case, I think maybe the hair should be sharpened. So I'm going to brush over the hair. I'm also going to brush over the eyebrows. Now make sure you don't brush over the eyes because we've already sharpened that earlier. So stroke over the eyebrows, also the mouth, maybe a bit more hair, and that's about it. And again, if you'd like to see what's being sharpened, what will sharpen through the top layer to the middle layer, you can unselect the two bottom layers, make them non-visible, and here we see what's showing through and what's being sharpened. So that seems right to me. I'm going to make these bottom layers visible again by clicking on the eye. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to collapse these layers by pressing Ctrl-Shift-E. Now from here, there's a few wrinkles in my forehead, and I'm going to zoom into that. And to do so, I'm pressing Ctrl+. And what I'm going to do here is use a tool called the Clone tool. Actually, it's the Clone Stamp tool. So I've selected that, and the size I'm going to give it is probably something like 50 pixels. Yeah, that seems right. Now to get this tool to work, you're going to be selecting an area next to the wrinkle, quite close, because it has to have the same skin tones. And you're going to make a sample of an area that you want to reproduce. Now to create that sample, you're going to press Alt, and that will give you a crosshair, and then you're going to be selecting an area. So I've selected an area, and now I'm going to go over the wrinkle and just brush across. I'm going to do the same process by reselecting an area right next to the wrinkle and brushing across again. And I'm going to do that for each of them. And there we have it. So my forehead is now wrinkless. Now, here's another technique. I guess I needed a bit more sleep before this portrait. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my dodge tool that we use for the eyes. But this time I'm going to use it, just give it a gentle stroke underneath my eyes. And that will take away of the fatigue in this area, just below my eyes. So my brush is set at 93 pixels and the exposure 20%. And I'm just going to brush that a couple times on each side. So there we have it. The last step for the enhanced portrait technique is we're going to be creating a vignette. So to do so, I'm going to press Ctrl-J, and I'm going to select my lasso tool. Now because this picture was taken at 10 megapixels, there was a slight crop. But anyhow, I'm going to use the lasso tool with a feathering of 250. You really need the feathering of 200, 250, because if you have 0, you won't have a gradient and the vignette won't work at all. So I'm just going to go generally around my picture really quickly here, not too close to my head. And from here, now that the selection has been made, I'm going to right click on that and I'm going to go to Layer via Copy. So the last step to be able to create the vignette is we're going to go back to our middle layer in the layer palette. So make sure the middle layer is selected, and you want to go to a blending mode of Multiply, and that's added a vignette around my picture. Now I'm happy with the results. I'm ready to post this to the web. I'm going to press Control-Shift-E. I might want to save this. File, Save. And if you're going to post this to the web, you might have to resize it with a height of 800 pixels. Thank you.